Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics. Thank you so much for being here. In today's video, I'm going to show you how, why, and when you should clean a canister filter. We're going to use the filter in the gallery right here behind me in one of these tanks. Thank you so much for being here. All right, so all of these aquariums, all 5 of them in the gallery, if you've been watching the live streams or our videos for a while, you know that all 5 of these, they run on canister filters. The 2 in the back, the two 125s, and this 50-gallon lowboy, well, they run on some Oaza canister filters. And then the 275s, we've got some Fluval 407s in those 2 tanks, the one over here and the one over here. Now, what we're going to be doing is I'm actually going to be looking at this particular canister filter for this video. It's the Fluval 407. This is a 75-gallon aquarium. We've got some really shy Mbuna cichlids in here, some yellow labs, along with some Pseudotrophia sloci. We have some Buenos Aires tetras to kind of bring them out. And normally that works, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is we're going to go ahead and clean the canister filter here. All right, so the first thing is, how do we know when a canister filter needs to be cleaned? And for that, I'm looking at the water quality. Now, it can be difficult when it comes to a canister filter when to know to clean the media, because unlike other filters, you can't see the media. A hang-on back filter, you can inspect it. Sponge filters are super easy to see. But the canister filter, what we're relying upon is the mechanical filtration of the filter itself. In other words, how clear does the water look? Now, I'm looking at this aquarium here. This is a 75-gallon. We've got the Buenos Aires tetras in here. We've got some Mbuna cichlids that are kind of shy sometimes. But I'm looking real closely at the water quality. And I'm seeing some stuff floating around that isn't normally floating around in the water. Might be a little bit easier to see over here with the 125. And so the 125, again, I can see some stuff floating around. And this tank as well is going to get some refreshing in terms of the canister filter media here. But this tank is going to require a different method because it's got a different canister filter. But for the most part, what I'm going to be explaining here on this aquarium, you could pretty much follow these general guidelines no matter what type of canister filter you have. So the bottom line is, when do you need to clean a canister filter? The way you'll know is when the water just doesn't look as well. That means the media inside that canister filter is starting to get all gunked up with detritus, and it's really not doing its job anymore. So let's go ahead. We're going to open up the bottom here, and we're going to take a look. And here's our filter. Down here we have a Fluval 407. Now, some things we need to do when we are cleaning this canister filter. First thing, always unplug the canister filter. All right, so I have unplugged the canister filter. Now again, some of this is going to be somewhat dependent upon the canister filter that you have, but the next thing we're going to do is we have to make sure that the water in the aquarium is no longer going to flow into the canister filter itself. This particular model here has this little gray thing right here, this little lever. It's down. I press it up. That's going to stop the water from flowing into the aquarium. Next thing is you are going to want a towel because, well, there's probably going to be a little bit of water that gets spilled even though you've stopped the water from the aquarium. For us, with this particular canister filter, again, there is usually a mechanism that will detach the hoses from the actual canister filter. That's this red latch right here. We lift up and you can see a little bit of water came out, so be it. Let that drip in. And now, let me go ahead and get the camera to refocus. And now the canister filter is free from the hoses. Next thing is we've got to get that top of that canister filter off. Next thing we have to do is we have to go ahead and take the top of the canister filter off from the body of the canister filter. There's usually a couple latches. Depending on the size of your canister filter, you may have 2, you may have 4. But be really careful with these, because if you're too rough with them, you can break these right off, and it doesn't really matter what the brand is. I've had it happen before, so we just unlatch that, and then it comes off the bottom here. Same thing over here. Now, this part will come right off, and you can see, yeah, we got some growtiness here, but it's not horrible. All right, so one of the things, let me go ahead and set this down on the towel, of course. One of the things that you'll see a lot, it's all over YouTube, and it's a super popular thing to do. I haven't cleaned my canister filter in 2 years. Bad, really, 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 really bad idea, because you see all this gunk in here? that is organic compounds. And those organic compounds are being eventually going to be broken down by bacteria that are going to be, one, utilizing oxygen, two, they're going to be creating nitrate. And if you get a lot of this detritus in here, guess what's happening? This canister filter has just become a giant nitrate making factory. So we really do want to maintain these things. I know it's cool on the internet, or oh yeah, or brag about it. I haven't cleaned this thing in forever. But your canister filter and the ability to do what it needs to do is seriously suffering. Not only that, but if you look at the media in here, it's actually not horrible, and I'll show you that. I'll bring it to the sink in a second. We'll go ahead and take this little piece off here, and this right here, that is some of the floss. Now, I just cleaned this thing maybe 8 to 12 weeks ago, but we got a bunch of cichlids in here, right? So we've got all these cichlids, got about 15, 18 of them in here, along with the Buenos Aires, a couple bristlenose. They're big eaters. And so you can see here, okay, we've got some stuff that's a little gunked up, but now here's the thing, especially with these sponges here, okay? So if these were really, really bad, and they're actually not that bad, but if these were totally gunked up, if the detritus gets in this sponge and starts blocking oxygen from the microbes that are supposed to be doing the nitrification process, they need air. And if they get covered with gunk, they cannot easily convert ammonia to nitrite, nitrite to nitrate. So you wind up with a big problem. Maintain your canister filters. Make sure the minute you start seeing them not be able to pull stuff out of the water column, it's probably time. I generally, for us, that means every couple of months, we're going through and we're doing these things. Now, let's go over to the sink and I'll show you what I do. Okay, so here we are, we're at the sink. Now, I know what I'm about to say is going to be a little bit controversial, and many of you are going to wonder about what I am doing. I've done a video on this before about sponge filters and why it is perfectly acceptable to clean them in tap water, and the same principles apply here. So yes, I'm sure you have heard, hey, don't clean these things in tap water. Tap water has chlorine. Chlorine kills beneficial bacteria. You're going to get an ammonia spike. We clean all our sponge filters, all of our hang-on-back media, all of our canister filter media in untreated tap water. And the reason we do that is these microbes are not going to be impacted by the chlorinated tap water because we're not giving them the contact time they need for the chlorine to actually kill the microbes. So, very, very short period of time in the tap water, back in the canister filter water they go, which is unchlorinated. Back in the tank they go. The key here is we just don't spend a lot of time in the chlorinated tap water, so it's not going to really do much to our beneficial bacteria. So we go ahead, I just turn this on cold water. I don't use hot water. That would damage your bacteria. You can see here we have, it's kind of dirty. And so again, this is why you see all this stuff coming off of here. It's pretty nasty. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to go ahead and rinse this off for a few seconds. We're going to get the dirtiness pretty much out of here. And when I see most of it out, then I will obviously put it back in the hanger part. So now we see the difference. Okay, so we see the difference between the two. This is just going to go right back in. Same thing for this side. And I'm going to go ahead and do this for all the media. Now, I do not generally do much cleaning of any type of biomedia that I would have in the canister filter. So if you've got bio rings or anything like that, for the most part, that doesn't get a whole lot of cleaning because it's not designed to trap detritus. But if it is gunked up in any way, I will go ahead and rinse it off because, again, the detritus is blocking the beneficial bacteria from getting oxygen, and they need that oxygen in order to accomplish the nitrification process. So this is just after a couple of months. You can see just how nasty and dirty this was. So it's a big difference. And this is why when I was looking at my tank, there was stuff floating around because this media can only trap so much before it becomes saturated, and then it just bypasses and allows a lot of the detritus to go right through. And that's what was happening in that 75 gallon. So this part right here, that's done. That is a lot of our pre-filter. So I'm going to put this back in the canister filter. And now I'm going to be bringing the individual trays. This is where you probably want to exercise a little bit more caution. Again, this is just filter floss. It's not going to be nearly as dirty because our pre-filter caught a lot of the gunk that was in there. Keep in mind that Again, this particular 407 has 7 different trays. Just going to go ahead and set that down. And as we get deeper into this, for me, most of it is filter floss because I just want this to trap a whole bunch of detritus. In fact, my personal opinion for my canister filters is I don't really use a lot of biomedia because the floss and the sponge that comes with these, so like this stuff right here, it has the ability to house a lot of bacteria, way more than a fish tank is going to need. A canister filter has way more surface area. Even if you're just using floss and sponge, than you would ever actually need in almost any setup you could possibly imagine. That setup that I have in that 75-gallon could easily run on one medium-sized sponge filter for the entire tank, and that would be more than enough biological capacity for those fish. And so when you're using a canister filter, primarily you're getting a lot of biomedia space, but I really love canister filters because they're quiet and because they do house so much ability for mechanical filtration, which serves doubly as your biological filtration. Now, if you also want to add some chemical filtration, and so I know a lot of people like to do that with maybe Purigen or activated carbon, by all means, that's perfectly acceptable. I don't do that. I have never found it to be necessary. I think our tanks look pretty darn good without having to use that. So it's not something I particularly am concerned about or use. So again, there's a couple of big sponges in here. And again, look at that. You can see all that nastiness. And in fact, this sponge is so saturated, you'll know if you have a sponge that really needs to be cleaned, whether it's a sponge filter or hang on back. If you squeeze it and you can barely get the stuff out, well, that is usually an indication that it is saturated with garbage and detritus. So I'll go ahead and do both of these. This is just more filter floss. I use a lot of filter floss in my canisters, but I have to because, again, our tanks, unlike for a lot of people, our tanks are very visible every single week, right? They're in the backdrops of our live streams. They're in the backdrops of all the videos that we do. And I want them to look nice. I want them to have a nice, clean appearance. That's one of the reasons why I chose the canister filter, because one, they're super quiet, and two, they have an awesome mechanical filtration ability. They move a lot of water. Now, if you're interested, I did do a video on the Fluval 407. So I'll put that in the upper right-hand corner. I haven't done a long-term review. That should be coming out soon, but it's actually been a year since I've done that video. And so now that we've done all of this, so we've got all of these compartments done, let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and put this back in the canister filter, and I'll bring you back over to the tank. All right, we've got the canister filter back over here next to the aquarium. Next thing I want to do is I'm just going to put this little gray piece back on. One thing, it is a very good idea. In fact, it's necessary when you're cleaning a canister filter. Make sure it's filled back up with water. I usually just fill it to about the point where the media is exposed. This piece is going to go back on because that's how the media gets directed. And I'm going to put the top back on. Now again, here you just want to make sure that when you're doing this, it is nice and level and flush and it's sealed properly and tightly, because if it's not, you're going to have some leaking issues. I always keep the towel nearby because with a canister filter, unlike some of the other types, you just never know if something is going to go a little bit wrong. Go ahead and refasten your side clips back on. And then I'm going to need 2 hands to get this back into the aquarium, so I'll come back here in a second and show you how to get it back started again. This is always the fun part. Okay, so I just put the lid back on. I went ahead and tightened everything back down. I've got the water that theoretically could flow back into the canister filter. This part right here, every canister filter has a mechanism to get water flowing through suction from the aquarium back into the canister filter itself. And this right here, this little thing right here, when you press this down and you pump this, this is going to allow us to evacuate air that's in the canister filter and to get water flowing back in. Now, I go ahead and pump that a couple times. I'm going to go ahead and plug this back in and let's see what goes on. All right, so we can hear it. It's running. Now, this is going to be the part, this is going to freak some of you out. I don't really care. Look at all the stuff going back into my tank. My tank is ruined. I've made things so much worse by cleaning the canister filter. Oh no, what am I going to do? Nothing. I'm going to let the canister filter do what it does. We loosened up some stuff in here. I did not dump all the water out of the canister filter because when I cleaned the media, I really wanted to have that dechlorinated water so that the filter media could go right back in. And again, that's going to limit the contact time from the chlorine and chloramines so that really not much is happening to your beneficial bacteria. Could you be losing a little bit? Maybe. Have I ever had an ammonia spike doing it this way? Absolutely not. We do this every single time we clean all of our filtration. Sponge filters every single week. Hang-on back filters every single week. You saw I cleaned all of the media in the canister filter with the chlorinated tap water in the sink. Now, if you want to use a bucket of water instead of tap water, that's perfectly fine. If what you're doing is working, you don't need to change anything. You don't need to do it my way. I do it this way because it's way easier just to rinse that stuff off in the sink and not put the stuff in a bucket filled with tank water, and then next thing you know, you squeeze it the first time, all the stuff is released from your media, but then as you release the sponge or the floss, it's sucking up all that dirty water again. So it's really not doing a whole heck of a lot to get the media cleaned out. And again, we want that to do mechanical filtration. So yeah, this tank is cloudy right now. I have a live stream tonight. I'm not worried about it. So as I'm making up this video, I have a live stream that's going to be happening in about 5 hours or so. And I'm not worried about it. This tank will be clear by the time that happens. So I did this because I don't want, when it comes to the media, I left all the water in the canister filter so that when I do rinse the media in chlorinated tap water, it goes right back into unchlorinated tank water again. So that is how we clean that filter. So hopefully that gives you some idea of what to do with your canister filters when you know you need to clean them, how to do it, why we do it, because we really want to make sure our bacteria are fully functioning and we want to make sure our tanks look good. Now I get to go and do the other one over here, the barb tank right behind me. And eventually I will talk about the other canister filters. I will do long-term updates on both the Owaza Biomaster filters and the Fluval 407s. And by the way, if you want to see a gallery tour, it's been a little while since we've done one. Just let me know that in the comments section below. Thank you so much for being here. And by the way, if you want to see that review, check out the upper right-hand corner for the 407. If you want to see the Owaza Biomasters, check out that video in the lower right-hand corner. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.